Picture the raw, smoky chaos of a 1970s drag strip at dusk. Nitro funny cars thundering like thunder gods, massive flames shooting sky-high, the quarter-mile shaking under 200+ mile-per-hour launches. Then, in a move that terrified and electrified every soul in the stands, the driver yanks the shifter and rockets backwards through his own tire smoke at a blistering 100 miles per hour. The crowd in bell-bottoms and muscle car t-shirts exploding into absolute frenzy while a stunning miniskirt-clad bombshell struts beside the car, whipping the fans into a fever pitch like it's the wildest rock concert of the decade. This wasn't some polished modern show. This was pure, untamed 1970s drag racing rebellion, and the man who invented it all was Jungle Jim Liberman, drag racing's original rock star, born Russell James Liberman way back on September 12, 1945, in the quiet farmlands of Pennsylvania, where as a restless high school dropout in the swinging 60s he first tasted speed in beat-up Chevys before dropping everything to chase nitro glory full-time. How did this small-town gearhead kid from Westchester explode onto the scene in the late 1960s, winning big at places like Lyons Drag Strip in '68, pioneering insane backward burnouts that no sane racer would touch, and turning every match race into a traveling circus of fire, smoke, and showmanship that changed the sport forever? And what savage, heart-stopping darkness, what cruel twist waiting in the shadows of those glory days, snuffed out this legend in his prime, just 3 days shy of his 32nd birthday on September 9, 1977, when his street Corvette smashed head-on into disaster on a quiet Pennsylvania road, leaving the entire old-school drag world in stunned silence. Hang on tight, because the real story behind Jungle Jim's wild ride is packed with more raw explosions, heartbreak, and jaw-dropping truths than any nitro blast he ever unleashed back in those gritty, no-holds-barred 1970s. This isn't today's sanitized clips. It's the authentic, blood and burnout history that still gives chills. For the old-timers who lived it, he's instant nostalgia fuel. For new fans, he's the proof that in the golden age of speed, fame, danger, and pure passion, one man could become an immortal legend or lose it all in a heartbeat. But long before the massive crowds, before the nitro haze swallowed the strip, before Jungle Pam, met in May 1972 when she was just 18 and walking down a Pennsylvania street, stepped into his world and turned the spectacle nuclear, there was one single, unexpected spark that lit the fuse on it all, and brother, it sure as hell wasn't what you'd ever guess. The early days and rise to fame. Picture this lanky, soft-spoken Pennsylvania dropout Russell James Liberman, born September 12, 1945, quitting high school junior year because no textbook could compete with the scream of AV8. By 1964 he's already grinding stock class at Fremont Raceway after hauling ass west to Northern California where the real drag war was raging, wheeling a beat-up '57 Chevy in amateur brackets like every other nobody chasing freedom on four wheels. But 1965 flipped the switch. He jumped balls deep into funny cars with an injected Nova in those primitive days when steel bodies flexed, blowers were half-ass experimental, and safety was whatever didn't kill you today. Then 1966 hit like a nitrous hammer. He went full outlaw, bought his own supercharged steel Chevy 2, slapped Jungle Jim on it for the first goddamn time, and started ripping strips apart with savage, untamed runs that made the nickname stick because this quiet kid drove like a jungle animal, ferocious, fearless, zero fucks given. That same year he even strapped into Lou Arrington's Primer Brown Brutus GTO funny car for its Fremont debut, tasting big league nitro early. Little did he know ditching any normal life, steady paycheck, safe future, for wheels-up launches and flame-throwing passes in cars that could barbecue you in a heartbeat would make him untouchable, or start a fire that would eat him alive later. By 1967 he went all nitro, debuting his own blown, Jungle Jim, Nova funny car back at Fremont, big block Chevy on juice, parachute failing day one, but momentum unstoppable, then toured the country in a patched hauler with a rotating arsenal, Hercules-injected Chevy, Gypsy Corvette, Brutus GTO with blown 392 Hemi, running brutal match races coast to coast in the raw pre-NHRA days when fans came for blood and spectacle. The real explosion? Early 1968, NHRA Funny Car Nationals, Lyons Drag Strip, Long Beach. Jungle Jim tore through eliminations with tire shredding, sideways, wheel-standing runs that shut mouths and started legends. He won the whole fucking thing, igniting coast-to-coast tours, two-car teams, bigger money, and a name that meant business. That Jungle Jim tag, born on the 1966 Chevy 2, nailed his predatory style perfectly, evolving into his signature insanity, backward burnouts he owned in the late 60s and early 70s, slamming reverse after every long smoky burnout and ripping backwards at up to 100 miles per hour through his own haze. A stunt so stupidly ballsy no other nitro driver in that era even attempted it, turning every pass into pure rock show chaos. He wasn't racing for points. He was performing for the people, living the gritty, risk-everything American dream of the muscle car age, betting his life on launches in cars with shit safety and nitro that forgave nothing, yet that same crazy innovation made him the most respected showman drag racing ever produced, the guy who proved the sport could be bigger than the stopwatch. But no rock star hits God mode solo. Every legend needs that one muse to blow the roof off, and Jungle Jim's was about to crash into his life like a teenage bombshell ready to set the whole damn thing on fire. Peak fame and the showman era. Cut straight into the screaming heart of the 1970s drag racing explosion, nitro funny cars launching like bombs, flames shooting 20 feet high, crowds in bell-bottoms and cut-off t-shirts packed 10 deep at every strip from Pomona to Gainesville to Englishtown, the air thick with race gas, burnt rubber, and the constant roar of blown Hemis on full juice. Jungle Jim Liberman had become the absolute ruler of the match race circuit by the early 1970s, the guy who didn't give a damn about chasing NHRA points championships because the real money, the real fame, the real chaos lived in those head-to-head promoter-paid matchups where he could unleash every ounce of his wild showmanship without some suit telling him to tone it down. He was running 3, sometimes 4 events a week, hauling multiple funny cars cross-country in patched-up trailers, crew sleeping in the hauler, nitro cans rattling, tires stacked like cordwood, living on adrenaline, bad coffee, and the next paycheck. His cars were monsters, 1973 Vega body on a chrome moly chassis, blown 426 Hemi or big block Chevy underneath gulping 90% nitro loads through massive blowers, fuel pumps screaming at 12,000 revolutions per minute, headers glowing cherry red, parachutes barely opening in time to keep the car from looping at 220 plus mph. Every run was a gamble, wheel stand off the line, smoke the tires to the 330-foot mark, correct sideways 3 times, flames licking the quarter panels, then cross the line in low 6s while the crowd lost their fucking minds. But the real signature, the thing that made Jungle Jim stand out from every other nitro driver on the planet, was those legendary backward burnouts. He'd do the long smoky burnout first, black haze filling both lanes, engine howling at redline, then slam it into reverse and rip backwards at up to 100 miles per hour straight through his own smoke cloud, tires spinning the wrong way, crowd erupting into pure hysteria every single time because no other driver in the entire funny car class had the balls or the skill to pull that stunt consistently without killing himself or flipping the car into the grandstands. Promoters loved him. They'd pay extra just to have Jungle Jim on the card because he guaranteed sellouts. Kids climbing fences, women throwing bras, grown men screaming like teenagers at a concert. Then came May 1972, 2 weeks before Pam Hardy even graduated high school in Westchester, Pennsylvania. Jungle Jim, cruising in his bright yellow Corvette, spots this tall, blonde 18-year-old bombshell walking down the street, long legs, killer smile, pure attitude. He pulls over, rolls down the window, hits her with that famous grin and says something cocky, and just like that, Jungle Pam is in his life and on his team. She didn't think twice, quit everything, joined the tour as his girlfriend and full-time sidekick, strutting in those tiny hot pants and halter tops that became iconic, staging the car at the line with that confident walk, waving to the fans, hyping the crowd into a frenzy while Jim did his burnout rituals. Pam wasn't decoration. She worked, helped push the car to the line, checked staging beams, handed tools, even jumped under the hood between rounds when the crew was hungover or short-handed. Their chemistry was nuclear. Jim the wild, untamed driver risking death every pass, Pam the cool, sexy presence that made the whole show irresistible, turning drag racing from gearhead sport into full-blown entertainment spectacle with sex appeal, danger, and rockstar energy. By 1973 they were unstoppable, featured heavily in the Raw documentary Burn On, shot at New England Dragway during the NHRA Grand American Series, cameras catching nitro explosions, wheel stands that nearly looped the car, sideways corrections at 150 miles per hour, flames engulfing headers, Pam strutting proud at the top end, crowds going berserk as Jungle Jim pushed his Vega funny car harder than anyone thought possible in those pre-electronics, pre-data days. He kept evolving the cars, switched to Camaro bodies, then Monza shells, always fiberglass lightweights over blown big blocks or Hemis, running compression ratios that would detonate lesser engines, fuel systems dialed to the edge where one wrong jet change meant boom. Match races were his kingdom, head-to-head against other nitro killers like Jungle John, King and Marshall, Snake and Mongoose crews, But Jungle Jim usually stole the show with longer burnouts, wilder wheelies, that backward rip that ended every elimination round with fans on their feet. He didn't win every national event because he rarely chased the full NHRA schedule, too much travel, too much risk for too little payout compared to matches. But when he did show up, he delivered. In 1975 at the NHRA Summer Nationals in Englishtown, New Jersey, he finally bagged his one and only NHRA Wally, beating the field in a Vega that was dialed in perfect, low ETs all weekend, smoking burnouts that blanketed the track, backward pass at 100 miles per hour that had 60,000 people screaming, "Pam right." They're celebrating as he took the trophy. That win was validation. He could beat the best on their turf, but match racing remained his bread and butter, the place where he lived the rockstar life. Non-stop touring, motel rooms smelling like race gas, parties after wins, fights after losses, nitro headaches that lasted days, hands permanently black from grease and carbon, adrenaline so high sleep was optional. Jungle Jim and Jungle Pam became drag racing's first true power couple, him driving like a man with nothing to lose, her owning the staging area and the spotlight, their relationship raw and passionate, arguments in the pits over jetting or burnout length, makeups under the trailer lights, the kind of intensity that matched the nitro blasts perfectly. Fans loved the danger. They'd cheer louder when the car got loose, scream when flames shot higher, go insane for the backward burnout that felt like pure rebellion against physics and common sense. But living that fast had a price. The constant travel ground them down, nitro fumes poisoned lungs over time, fires were common, cars engulfed in seconds if the blower belt snapped or fuel line blew. Flips happened at 200 miles per hour when the chute didn't deploy right, and every weekend carried the real chance that one run could end it all. Jungle Jim pushed boundaries harder than anyone, longer burnouts to hype crowds, wilder stunts to keep the show fresh, bigger risks to stay king, but the pressure built quietly, sponsors starting to want more polish, NHRA tightening rules, younger drivers coming up faster, the road life wearing on body and mind, the high of fame starting to feel like a slow-burning fuse. He was drag racing's first rock star, the man who turned the quarter mile into an arena of fire and chaos. But every legend has shadows, and Jungle Gyms were growing longer with every smoky backward pass. The nitro kept flowing, the crowds kept roaring, Pam kept strutting, but the cracks were there. Burnout wasn't just on the tires anymore. It was creeping into the man himself. Hang on, because what looked like eternal glory was hiding a darkness that would hit harder than any crash on the track. The tragic fall. Now the story turns dark, because even the brightest flames burn out, and Jungle Jim Liberman's ended not in a glorious nitro fireball on the strip like everyone expected, but in the quiet, stupid cruelty of a September evening in 1977. It was September 9, 1977, just 3 days shy of what would have been his 32nd birthday on September 12. Russell James Liberman, the man who had cheated death hundreds of times with two 20-mile-per-hour wheel stands, sideways corrections at half-track, flames engulfing his funny car while he laughed it off, backward burnouts at 100 miles per hour that defied every law of sanity, lost control of his bright yellow street Corvette on an ordinary backroad in West Goshen Township, Pennsylvania, not far from the same West Chester streets where he grew up tinkering as a kid. No massive crowd, no starting line, no nitro haze, no Pam waving from the staging beams, just a high-speed street crash. The Corvette veering off, slamming head-on into a tree or utility pole depending on which old report you read, metal twisting, glass shattering, and in an instant the legend was gone. He died on impact, no chance to fight, no last burnout, no final wave to the fans. Pronounced dead at the scene, body mangled beyond recognition in a wreck that had nothing to do with the quarter-mile glory he lived for. The news hit the drag racing world like a sucker punch. Phones rang off hooks in pits across the country, crews stopped mid-wrench, drivers pulled over on highways when the radio broke the story, promoters canceled events in shock because how do you run a race when the king just fell off his throne? Jungle Pam, only 23 years old, got the call and collapsed. She had been with him through every smoky burnout, every close call, every motel fight and victory celebration, and now the man who pulled her into this crazy life was erased in a split-second mistake on a road far from the strip. She later said in rare interviews that the grief was unbearable, the sudden silence after years of constant engine roar, the empty hauler, the funny cars sitting cold in the shop, the fans still asking where's Jungle Jim, like he might pull up any minute. The funeral was small, private, back in Pennsylvania, family, close crew, a few drivers who made the trip, no big media circus because drag racing in '77 wasn't mainstream enough for that yet, but the outpouring from the pits was real. telegrams, flowers from tracks he'd torn up, letters from kids who'd seen him backward burn out their local strip and decided racing was their future. NHRA issued a statement calling him one of the most innovative and entertaining drivers the sport had ever known. NHRA, where he cut his teeth, mourned the loss of their biggest draw. Promoters who once fought to book him now realized the hole he'd left could never be filled the same way. The circuit kept running because it had to, funny cars still launched, burnouts still smoked, but something was missing. The shows felt flatter, the crowds a little quieter, the danger a little less thrilling without Jungle Jim pushing every boundary to the breaking point. In the months after, stories spread like wildfire, how he'd survived flips that should have killed him, how he'd walked away from fires that swallowed entire cars, how he'd pioneered the backward burnout not for points but because it made people scream louder, and now all that fearless energy was snuffed out in a non-racing crash that felt almost insulting in its ordinariness. Pam tried to keep going for a while, stayed around the team briefly, helped sell off parts, answered fan mail, but the spark was gone. She eventually stepped away from drag racing entirely, moved on to a quieter life, married, had kids, rarely spoke publicly except in old-timer interviews where she'd get that faraway look and talk about how Jim lived more in his 31 years than most do in 80, how he loved the roar, the smell, the danger, how he never backed down from a challenge on or off the track. The tragedy hit hardest because it wasn't the heroic end fans romanticized. No nitro explosion, no heroic save, just a Corvette going too fast on a wet or dark road, driver error or mechanical failure or simple bad luck, and the legend cut short before he could evolve into the elder statesman role, before he could mentor the next generation or see drag racing become the billion-dollar spectacle it is today. But even in death, Jungle Jim refused to fade quietly. His influence started seeping into every corner of the sport almost immediately. Drivers copied his long burnouts, though never the backward part at that speed, too risky even for the bold ones. Showmanship became a requirement, not an option. Promoters demanded entertainment along with ETs. By the 1980s and 1990s, guys like John Force openly credited Jungle Jim as the blueprint for their own over-the-top personalities. Force's burnouts, his yelling, his crowd work, his refusal to just race quietly all trace back to watching Jungle Jim turn the strip into a stage in the 1970s. Kenny Bernstein, Don Prudhomme, even modern Nitro stars like Ron Capps and Matt Hagan carry pieces of that Jungle Jim DNA. The understanding that fans pay for thrills, not just time slips. In 2001, when NHRA released its official top 50 drivers of all time list, Jungle Jim ranked number 17, higher than many multi-champions, because his impact went beyond wins. He changed how the sport sold itself, how it connected with people who didn't know a camshaft from a crankshaft. Today, every time a funny car driver does an extended burnout to hype the crowd, every time a team turns eliminations into theater with flames and smoke and attitude, every time a newcomer gets called a showman, it's Jungle Jim's ghost nodding from the sidelines. Pam still gets recognized at nostalgia events. Fans thank her for being part of the magic, ask about the hot pants days, the nitro smell, the nights when Jim would come back to the pits covered in soot and grinning like he'd just conquered the world. She smiles, tells the stories, but the sadness lingers, because he was gone at 31, before kids, before grandchildren, before seeing his daughter grow up. He had a daughter from an earlier relationship who barely knew him, before the sport he helped explode gave him his due in prime time. The real shock isn't that he died young, it's that he died ordinary, on a street not a strip, after surviving so much worse. It reminds everyone in racing that speed doesn't care if you're a legend or a nobody, one bad moment and it's over. Jungle Jim Liberman wasn't perfect. He was reckless, stubborn, lived hard, partied hard, pushed everyone around him to the limit, but he was authentic in a way few ever are. He took drag racing from back-alley grudge matches to something bigger, something electric, something that felt alive. His legacy isn't in Wallace or records. It's in the way the sport still echoes his chaos, his grin, his refusal to play it safe. The backward burnouts may have stopped, the nitro clouds thinned, Pam moved on, but Jungle Jim's spirit never left the quarter mile. Every flame, every scream, every kid dreaming of going fast carries a piece of him. He lived fast, loved hard, burned bright, and left too soon, but damn if he didn't leave the biggest mark possible. From that quiet Pennsylvania kid who dropped out to chase horsepower, to the rock star who owned every strip he touched, to the legend whose story still gives chills decades later, this was Jungle Jim Liberman, drag racing's first and maybe greatest rock star, gone but never forgotten. And if there's any justice in the universe, somewhere out there on an endless drag strip, he's still ripping that backward burnout at 100 miles per hour, flames roaring, crowd going wild, forever untamed. So here we stand at the end of the real story behind Jungle Jim Liberman, drag racing's first and maybe forever greatest rock star. A man who started as a quiet Pennsylvania dropout named Russell James Liberman, born September 12, 1945, chasing V8 dreams in the gritty 1960s garages of Westchester, exploded onto the scene with that first Jungle Jim supercharged Chevy 2 in 1966, pioneered backward burnouts at 100 miles per hour that no one else dared touch, turned match races into coast-to-coast rock concerts with nitro flames and tire smoke, pulled Jungle Pam into his wild world in May 1972 and made drag racing sexier and louder than it had ever been, won his lone NHRA Wally at the 1975 Summer Nationals in Englishtown, lived harder and faster than almost anyone in the raw, pre-safety, pre-corporate 1970s nitro era, and then, 3 days before turning 32, was ripped away on September 9, 1977, not in some epic track crash like the legend deserved, but in a senseless street wreck in his yellow Corvette on a quiet Pennsylvania road, gone in an instant, leaving a hole in the sport that still hasn't closed. The shock wasn't just the death, it was the ordinariness of it. No crowd cheering, no final smoky burnout, no Pam at the line waving him off, just a high-speed mistake on a normal day, proving that even the wildest legends aren't invincible, that speed doesn't care if you're famous or forgotten, that the same fire that made him immortal could snuff him out without warning. Pam carried the grief for years, stepping away from the pits, trying to build a life without the constant roar, but she never fully left the story behind. Fans still find her at nostalgia runs, ask about the hot pants days, the nitro headaches, the nights Jim would come back covered in soot and grinning like he'd stolen the world. The drag racing world mourned hard in '77. Events paused, drivers cried in the pits, promoters realized they'd lost their biggest draw. But Jungle Jim didn't vanish. He embedded himself into the DNA of the sport forever. Ranked number 17 on NHRA's all-time top 50 drivers list in 2001, higher than plenty of multi-champions, because he didn't just win races, he changed how racing sold itself, how it connected with people who came for the show more than the stopwatch. Every extended burnout you see today, every driver yelling to the crowd, every funny car team turning eliminations into theater with flames and attitude and chaos, every time a new guy gets called a showman instead of just a driver, that's Jungle Jim's blueprint still alive. Copied by John Force, who openly says he studied Jungle Jim's style, by Kenny Bernstein, Don Prudhomme, even modern stars who never met him but feel his shadow every time they light the tires. He proved drag racing could be entertainment, not just competition. He took it from back-alley grudge matches to something electric, something that felt dangerous and alive and bigger than the quarter-mile itself. The backward burnouts may have mostly stopped, too risky even for today's brave ones. The nitro clouds got cleaner, the safety cages thicker, the rules stricter, the corporate sponsors more controlling, but the spirit Jungle Jim injected never died. Kids still watch old footage of his wheel stands and smoky reverse rips and decide they want to go fast. Old-timers still tell stories in the pits about the night Jungle Jim and Pam showed up and turned a quiet track into pandemonium. New fans discover him on YouTube and realize drag racing's golden age wasn't about perfect passes, it was about passion, risk, rebellion, and pure unfiltered thrill. Jungle Jim Liberman lived fast, loved hard, burned bright, crashed hard, and left too soon, but he left the biggest mark possible. He made drag racing feel like rock and roll never really dies. If his story hit you, the underdog rise, the nitro highs, the Jungle Pam magic, the heartbreaking end, then hit that like button right now if Jungle Jim's wild ride fired you up. Smash subscribe if you want more untold stories from drag racing's raw past and present. Drop a comment below with your favorite Jungle Jim moment or the most shocking racing fact you know. Share this video with anyone who loves speed, danger, and legends who lived without brakes. Because guys like Jungle Jim don't come around often, and when they do, the world needs to remember them, not sanitized, not safe, but exactly as they were, untamed, unstoppable, unforgettable. Thanks for riding along on this nitro-fueled trip through the real story behind Jungle Jim Liberman, drag racing's first rock star. Until the next burnout, keep the hammer down.